Hey guys, tonight we drift into the dense green world of the ancient Maya, where smoke curls from clay pots, stars speak louder than kings, and a whisper from a priestess can shape a village's fate. This isn't a world of distant empires or mighty conquests. This is the world beneath the canopy, where time moved in sacred cycles and every footstep echoed with meaning. You're not waking up in a palace or temple tonight. You're waking up in a humid, humming clearing deep in the forests of what we now call Guatemala. The year is 788 CE. It's early morning. The light is gold and filtered through thick fronds. And somewhere nearby, the first voice you'll hear is not that of a warrior or chief, but a fortune teller bent low over a bowl of still water, listening for what the gods might say next. And hey, before we sink into the story fully, if you enjoy this slow walk through forgotten lives and faraway mornings, go ahead and tap the like button. You don't have to, but if these sleepy tales speak to you, maybe stay a while. Subscribe if the mood fits, and if you've got a moment, I'd love to hear where you're listening from. What time is it where you are? I'm always amazed how this little village of ours keeps growing, one story at a time. All right, dim the lights, let the air hum softly around you. Maybe turn on that fan, or just sink deeper into your pillow. Let your breathing slow. Let's head back in time. The jungle hasn't yet shaken off its mist. Everything is damp and fragrant, a green so deep it feels eternal. Your bed is a woven mat, still warm from your own body heat, and the scent of wood smoke hangs in the air from the hearth your grandmother stirred before sunrise. In the distance, a parrot screams something it thinks is urgent, and a monkey shakes the branch of a ceiba tree like it's haggling with the gods. But here, in your tiny home of mud brick and thatch, all is still. Today is the day the oracle will speak, and that means your entire village has already begun to hold its breath. Your name is Ixmal. You're 13, daughter of a weaver and a fisherman, and this morning your feet ache before they even touch the ground. Not from walking, but from anticipation. Every few moons, the high priestess of the jungle shrine performs the sacred bowl reading, where smoke, reflection, and murmured chants guide her eyes to the path ahead. Crops, births, droughts, deaths. Everything begins with the bowl. And today, for the first time, your mother says you're old enough to sit quietly beside her and listen. But first, there's breakfast. And breakfast is a humble thing. You chew slowly on maize cakes wrapped in leaves. The outside is crisp from the fire, the inside soft with crushed squash and black beans. There's no rush. No one rushes on the day of a reading. Even the children, who usually shriek and race around the plaza, move with a sort of hushed awe, like the very stones are watching. You step outside and the heat folds around you like a damp blanket. Your bare feet sink slightly into the wet dirt, and the earthworms wriggle deeper, sensing footfall. The sky above is pale blue, streaked with clouds like smeared cotton. Somewhere beyond the trees, you can hear the distant beat of drums, slow, steady, the rhythm of preparation. It's not music, not really. It's more like a heartbeat. The heartbeat of a village about to peer beyond the veil. At the centre of town is the small temple, carved with glyphs no one your age can read. On top, the priestess will sit today behind the bowl, the feathers in her hair rustling softly even if the wind is still. They say she speaks with the gods, or that the gods borrow her voice for a little while. You've never seen her up close, only glimpses, bits of white paint on her cheeks, the way she moves with a slowness that makes everyone else seem frantic. Your stomach tightens, not with fear, with awe, and even though your mother warned you not to speak during the reading, not even a whisper, you know your heart will be shouting the whole time, because there's a question hidden in you, a question only the smoke might answer. You follow your mother quietly through the narrow path between homes, your feet pressing into the wet earth with each step. The ground smells of old rain and new life, a dampness that clings to everything here. Fern brushing against your legs, dew catching on your skin like tiny cold kisses. You can hear the faint rhythm of someone grinding maize in the next hut, stone against stone, a soft and repetitive sound that seems to echo across the village like a gentle heartbeat. Your mother's long skirt rustles as she walks ahead, her braid trailing down her back, heavy with beads carved from jade and bone. She does not speak. No one does. On this day, silence is a kind of offering. The air grows thicker as you reach the edge of the plaza. The morning is still young, but already the sun is beginning to filter down in soft shafts through the overhanging leaves, making dust dance in the light. A group of old men are already seated on stones by the well, their skin dark and cracked like sun-baked bark, their eyes focused on the horizon, as though watching for a storm that has not yet come. Their mouths do not move, but their presence is a kind of speech. These are men who have lived long enough to remember which prophecies came true and which ones almost did. Your mother gives a slow nod to them and leads you across the open space past the low altar where someone has already lit the first incense of the day. The smoke curls upward like a serpent rising to meet the sky, and it carries with it the smell of copal, sweet and ancient, like something that has been burned in this village for 1,000 years. You're not used to being this close to the temple. From your home, it is just another shape in the distance, a place for offerings and ceremonies, something sacred and separate. But now, standing in its shadow, you realize how deeply the stones are carved, how every surface is alive with symbols and faces, some smiling, some weeping, some simply staring back at you with blank eyes and open mouths. Your breath catches. This place is not just old, it is awake. The priestess is already on the platform. You can see her through the hanging veil of woven cotton, her body painted in white chalk, her eyes ringed in black. Her hands are still, her face unreadable. In front of her the bowl, simple, wide, made from reddish clay, its surface smoothed by years of use, and maybe, you imagine, by the prayers whispered into it. Behind her sits no throne, no guards, no attendants. Just a backdrop of trees and stone and the soft call of a bird that doesn't seem to belong to morning or night. She does not look at the crowd gathering below. She looks only at the bowl. Your mother takes your hand now gently, as though reminding you to breathe. She guides you to a place near the front, where you can sit on a blanket woven from thick cotton threads dyed with indigo and crushed insects. The ground here is warm from the sun and smells of ash and petals. Around you, people begin to settle into quiet clusters. Some hold offerings, bundles of corn, a bird feather, a shell from a distant river. Others have come with nothing but the questions. You have brought nothing. Only the ache of not knowing. You cannot see your mother's face now, but you feel her hand tighten around yours. It is almost time. The drums begin again, not loud, but steady. The priestess dips her fingers into the bowl and lifts a pinch of powder from a small pouch. She sprinkles it onto the surface and the smoke rises instantly, dark and twisting, forming shapes that disappear before you can name them. Her lips begin to move, not chanting, not speaking, just moving like she is conversing with something you cannot hear. Your skin prickles, the air around you feels thicker, heavier. You wonder if this is what it feels like when the gods press their ears to the earth. And just then, as the wind shifts slightly, and a hush rolls over the crowd like a soft wave, the priestess lifts her eyes, and for the first time she looks directly down at the people below. Her gaze stops, lands, rests on you. You do not answer. You do not move. For a few seconds you are not 13 years old, not a weaver's daughter sitting on a cotton mat under the morning sun. You're only a name hanging in the air, a sound that has left the priestess's lips and now drifts somewhere above the plaza like a dragonfly deciding where to land. It is not the name itself that frightens you. It's the way it landed, the way the entire crowd absorbed it in silence. Not one murmur, not one sigh, as if your name were not a name at all, but a sign that everyone had been waiting for and now did not know what to do with. Your mother has let go of your hand. Her fingers are wrapped around the edge of her own skirt now, twisted tightly, pulling the fabric in until her knuckles show pale beneath her brown skin. Her lips are moving, but they make no sound. A prayer maybe, or a plea, or something older than either. You want to look at her, to ask again what it means. But even now you know that something has shifted, and asking won't put it back. The priestess has gone still again. The bowl is no longer smoking. The air around her seems to pulse with an invisible breath. Then she begins to descend the temple steps, one slow footfall at a time. Her feet are bare, and each step seems chosen carefully, as though she's walking not on stone but on something fragile, like a surface made of memory. The crowd does not move. No one speaks. And in that stillness, the sound of birds and wind and faraway insects becomes louder than any voice. You can feel your heartbeat now, not in your chest, in your throat. She reaches the ground, and for the first time, you can see the full detail of her painted face. White chalk covers most of it, save for a line drawn down her forehead and across her cheeks in deep red, the colour of blood and crushed berries. Around her neck hang rows of bees, some made from shell, others from bone. She carries no staff, no scroll, no sacred object, only her voice, and now she is walking directly toward you. You try to stand, but your legs don't quite respond. The earth feels unsteady, like it isn't sure it wants to hold you anymore. Your mother's hand finds your shoulder, but she doesn't pull you back. She only touches you lightly, a reminder that you are still here, that this is still real. The priestess stops just a few steps away. Her eyes find yours again, and she lowers herself slowly to the ground so that she is sitting in front of you, cross-legged like any village elder telling a story at night. Her voice, when it comes, is soft, not gentle, just quiet enough to make everyone else lean in. "You dreamed last moon," she says. You nod before you even realize it. "In your dream, there was water." Another nod, slower this time, and a jaguar watching you from a place without trees. You feel something cold slide into your stomach. You had not told anyone about the dream, not your mother, not your brother, no one. "Yes," you whisper. The priestess closes her eyes, not in surprise, but like she's heard the final note of a song she's been humming all morning. Then she opens them again and speaks to the sky above you. She hears, that is enough. Then she reaches into the pouch at her side and pulls out a small stone. It is smooth, dark green, and carved with a symbol you don't recognize. She presses it into your hand and folds your fingers over it. "Take this. It is not for today. It is for the moment you do not want to believe in yourself. When that moment comes, do not throw this away." You want to ask what it means, what you're supposed to do, why you, of all the people, are being spoken to this way. But her eyes have already turned toward the plaza again, and she is rising. You stare at the stone. It is warm, warmer than it should be, and from somewhere behind you someone finally speaks, not a priest or elder, just an old woman, voice cracked by age and smoke. "It's starting again," she says, "just like the last time." The old woman's voice lingers in the air like a fog that no wind can carry away. You turn your head slightly, trying to see her face, but she has already melted into the crowd, becoming just another shadowed shape among villagers who now begin to stir and rise. The ritual is ending. The priestess has returned to the temple steps, and already others are sweeping the ashes, gathering the petals, whispering soft words that carry nothing more than the tone of routine. But her words haunt you, just like the last time. That sentence drips with something heavier than curiosity. It sounds like memory, like warning, and your fingers are still tightly closed around the stone. You feel its smooth surface press into your palm as if it has weight beyond its size. The symbol carved into it is shallow, worn at the edges, but still sharp enough in the centre to press faint lines into your skin. You try to make sense of its shape, but it is unfamiliar. Not one of the common glyphs painted on the walls of the plaza, or woven into the designs on your mother's textiles. This one feels older, simpler, as if it had been drawn. by someone who had more faith in the shape than in the meaning behind it, or perhaps someone who didn't want it to be understood easily. The sky has turned brighter now. The light is no longer soft. It spills over the plaza in thick waves, drying the earth and drawing steam from the rooftops. You hear the faint clatter of pots being cleaned, the chopping of wood behind one of the homes, the soft murmur of gossip blooming around the well like a flower fed by silence. People are pretending that what happened was ordinary, that your name being spoken by the priestess was just another part of the smoke and the chants and the rising sun. But you can feel their eyes even when their faces are turned away. Your mother helps you stand. Her hand is firm but gentle, the kind of touch that says, "Walk now, but don't forget what you carry." She doesn't speak until you're halfway across the plaza and nearly back to the shaded trail between the homes. When she does, her voice is low, almost hoarse, like she has swallowed something she cannot quite name. "She spoke your name because something is waking," she says, "not just inside you, in the world." You stop walking and look up at her. Her eyes are distant, searching the trees ahead, not as if looking for danger, but as if expecting something to step out at any moment and confirm her thoughts. Her voice lowers even more. "When I was your age, the priestess before her did the same. In the middle of the reading, she stopped and named a child. A boy. He didn't know why. No one did. But years later, when the rains vanished and the ground split and people left for other valleys, it was that boy who stayed, who saw things no one else would believe, who saved the last of the seeds. You don't know what to say. You weren't expecting to be compared to anyone, let alone someone remembered in stories your mother never told before. You want to ask what happened to him, what he saw, what it meant. But something in your mother's face tells you that she doesn't have the whole story either. Maybe no one does. You reach home and sit on the edge of the sleeping mat. The inside of your house is cool and dim, the walls still holding the smell of the early morning fire and the sweet smoke of dried fruit. Your brother is outside, chasing something small and fast near the garden, and your father's voice carries faintly from the riverbank where he has gone to check his nets. You open your palm and stare at the stone again. The light from the open doorway falls across it. For a moment, it almost looks like the symbol moves. Not in a magical way, just like a shadow shifting with the angle of the sun, but it's enough to unsettle you. Enough to make you wonder what the priestess saw in you. Enough to wonder if deep inside that bowl, among the smoke and the ash and the old names, she saw something more than just your dream, something that was already on its way. The rest of the morning passes in that strange state where everything is the same but nothing feels normal. Your mother doesn't speak much, but her silence is not cold. It is the silence of someone threading thoughts together like thin reeds, careful not to pull too tightly. She pours water into the clay basin near the hearth and begins kneading dough for tortillas. The motion is so familiar that it almost calms you, but the shape of the stone in your pocket presses gently against your leg, reminding you that today began with something unfamiliar. You try not to look at it again, but you know you will before the sun sets. You always return to things that don't make sense, hoping they'll explain themselves with time. You help your mother as best you can. Your fingers press the dough into shape, but they are clumsy, distracted. You burn one slightly on the hot griddle stone and wince, not from pain exactly, but because the small sting snaps you back into the world around you. Outside, your younger brother is now sitting in the dirt with a bowl of crushed berries, painting strange red lines onto the face of a broken clay idol he found near the garden wall. He sings to himself in the way that children do when no one is listening, words half invented, tunes older than he is. You watch him for a moment, wondering what stories he'll carry forward when he grows up, whether he'll remember this day at all, or whether the shape of this morning will only stay in the village's memory because of you. By mid-afternoon the heat has settled in. The air becomes thick, almost lazy, and even the birds quiet themselves, as if the sun's weight presses against their wings. The village slows. Your father returns with only a few small fish, his face drawn and his eyes quick to the sky. He says nothing about the catch. He knows there is no point. Droughts begin slowly, not with empty nets, but with days like this when the river smells off and the fish swim deeper than the hooks can reach. Later, while your parents rest under the roof's shade, you walk quietly to the edge of the village, down the trail that leads to the smaller shrine by the spring. It's not as grand as the temple in the plaza. There are no carved steps or painted stones, no offerings left in bowls, just a single statue of the rain god, half buried in vines and tilted to one side, like he is listening to something underground. The spring beside it flows slow and shallow, and in some places, the water doesn't move at all, just gathers in small warm pools, thick with leaves and frog eggs. You sit on the flat rock beside the statue and take the stone from your pocket. You run your thumb across the symbol, trying again to make sense of it. It's not the kind of thing your village carves anymore. That much is clear. The lines are simpler, rougher, almost as if they were made before people started carving for beauty, and began instead with meaning alone. You close your hand around it and let your other fingers trail through the warm water. A few dragonflies buzz nearby, their wings clicking faintly, sharp and fast. The wind barely touches you here. It feels like the kind of place that remembers too much. When you look up, you think for a moment that you see something move beyond the edge of the trees. Not an animal, not someone from the village, just a flicker of shape, like heat, like smoke. You hold your breath and wait, but nothing follows. The leaves sway gently and nothing else stirs. Still, something about the air has changed. You feel it behind your ribs, the way you feel when someone enters a room before you hear their footsteps. You stand slowly and tuck the stone back into your pocket. The statue of the rain god stares into the spring, unblinking, unreadable. You reach out and touch its moss-covered cheek just once, like you're saying goodbye or asking permission. And as you begin to walk back toward home, you realise something that makes your steps falter for just a moment. The symbol on the stone. It wasn't a word. It was a face, and it looked exactly like his. The moment you realise the face on the stone matches the god beside the spring, your breath falters, as if some part of your chest suddenly forgot how to work on its own. You stop walking and glance back at the statue, half convinced that its eyes might be following you now. Of course they are stone, dulled by rain and sun and the slow creep of moss. But that knowing stillness is hard to ignore. It's the same as the priestess's eyes had been. Not wide or watching, but aware. You turn back toward the trail, moving quicker now, not because you're afraid, but because there's a tremble in your bones that hasn't settled since morning. Every sound in the forest feels closer than usual. The hiss of wind through leaves becomes whisper. The crack of a twig under your heel sounds like a signal. Even the insects have changed their tune, their high chorus thinning as if the air itself is listening. When you return to the edge of the village, the shadows have grown longer. The scent of roasting squash drifts lazily from a neighbour's hearth, mixing with the warm tang of wood smoke and damp thatch. You hear laughter, 2 boys wrestling near the grain bins, one of them your cousin, his voice sharp with teasing. They call out to you, inviting you to join, but you wave them off with a half smile and continue toward home. You feel too distant now, like something fragile is coiled inside you and could break with one wrong word. You slip back into your house quietly, half hoping your mother will ask where you've been, half hoping she won't. She's seated near the fire, sorting dried maize kernels with the quick fingers, but she looks up and sees something in your face that makes her pause. She doesn't ask. She just nods toward the water gourd and says gently, "You'll want to drink. The heat is holding its breath today." You sit down beside her, still holding the stone in your hand, though your fingers have curled so tightly around it that it has left shallow marks in your skin. You rest your palm on your knee, letting the cool clay of the floor settle your nerves. For a while, the only sound is the whisper of kernels falling into a woven basket, soft and repetitive like rain on a leaf roof. Then finally you speak. "It's a face," you say. Your mother stops sorting. She does not turn to look at you, not right away. Instead, she sits very still, her hands resting gently in her lap. "The stone," you add, "is not a symbol, it's a face like the one at the spring." Now she looks at you. Her eyes aren't frightened, but there is a weight in them, as though she's looking not at you, but at everything you might become. She nods once, slowly, and reaches out to touch the hand holding the stone. There are things in this world, she says softly, that speak before we understand their language, that ask to be seen even when we aren't ready to see them. You don't answer. You don't need to. She leans closer, brushing at a strand of hair behind your ear like she used to when you were small, before you had dreams that left marks on your mornings. You should rest now, she murmurs. There will be more tomorrow. There always is after a day like this. You lie down on your mat, turning onto your side so the light of the doorway falls just behind your shoulder. The stone rests beside you, no longer clutched tightly, but not quite forgotten. Your body is tired, but your thoughts are not. They move slowly, like water in a dry stream bed, pulling at questions you do not yet know how to form. Who carved the face? Why was it given to you? What does the priestess know that she hasn't said aloud? And somewhere beneath those questions, deeper and quieter, is something else. A memory. Not yours exactly, but close enough to feel like it. A vision of water rising, of clouds gathering low and fast, of a jaguar crouched where no trees grow. You don't know how you remember it, only that it was never just a dream. And as the sky outside turns the colour of rust and smoke, and your brother begins to hum again from across the room, you close your eyes and let the hum carry you. Not into sleep, not yet. Into listening. Sleep does not come quickly. It lingers just out of reach, waiting behind your thoughts like a bird in the brush, watching you blink too many times in the dark. Your body rests, but your mind keeps drifting, circling back to the moment the priestess called your name, to the weight of the carved stone now tucked beneath your mat, and to the strange reflection you thought you saw in the god's face near the spring. Outside, the village settles slowly, one voice at a time disappearing into the hush. The air is heavy but still. The usual chorus of frogs and insects seems quieter than normal, and you wonder if it's the heat or something else making them hold back. Your mother and father lie a few steps away. They're breathing soft and steady. You can hear the slow rhythm of your brother shifting in his sleep, murmuring some nonsense to himself as he rolls onto his side. The shadows in the corners of your home seem to lean closer, not in a frightening way, but like they are listening too, as if they want to hear whatever your dreams are trying to say. When sleep finally finds you, it comes not as soft descent, but as a quiet pulling, like a hand beneath the surface of the river, guiding you downward. There is no colour at first, only darkness rippled with light, and the feeling of cool stone beneath your bare feet. You're standing somewhere you do not recognise, though it feels familiar. The sky is low, impossibly low, pressed down by clouds so thick they look carved. The trees are gone. The ground beneath you is cracked and dry. But not dead. Something hums beneath it, deep and steady, like the breathing of something enormous. Ahead, water glimmers, not a spring or a stream, but a still pool nestled in a hollow of stone. Its surface does not ripple. You move toward it, not walking exactly, but drawn. The reflection waiting in the water is not yours. It is the same face from the stone, the same deep-set eyes, the same curve of jaw carved into the mossy statue at the shrine. But now it moves. It blinks, and it speaks without opening its mouth. You do not hear words. You feel them as pressure in your chest, as warmth in your throat, as the way your hands suddenly curl into fists without meaning to. The message is not clear, but it settles inside you like a seed, not meant to bloom tonight, just meant to be carried. Then a roar, not loud, but near. The jaguar steps from behind the edge of the pool, silent as mist. His eyes are gold, unblinking. The breath smells of smoke and flowers crushed underfoot. It does not threaten, it watches. The muscles in its shoulders shift as it moves closer, but it does not bare its teeth. It stops beside you, and you know somehow that it will not follow, where you go next, is only here to make sure you arrived. You wake before dawn. The mat beneath you is cool, the air pressed close against your skin with that peculiar heaviness that comes before the sky begins to change. For a long while you just lie there, watching the small slit of pale light growing above the doorway and listening to the soft sounds of your family's breathing. The village is still asleep, but you are not. You do not feel tired. You feel full, like the dream left something inside you. Not a memory, not quite, more like a direction you haven't turned toward yet. You reach beneath your mat and pull out the stone. It is warm again, though no sun has touched it. You hold it against your chest, close your eyes, and whisper the only word that feels right in that moment. I'm listening. And from somewhere beyond the walls, deep in the trees or deep in yourself, nothing begins to answer. By the time the sky shifts fully from ink to grey, you're already outside. The village hasn't quite stirred, but the dogs have begun their soft morning patrols, sniffing at embers and empty baskets, watching the world as if they, too, have heard some subtle change in the air. The earth beneath your feet is cool and forgiving, moist from the dew that settles like a whisper each night. The soft pads of your soles know this ground well. Every bend in the path, every root that juts just enough to trip a lazy foot, every dip in the earth where puddles gather after rain. But today, it feels different, as if the path is not merely a way to somewhere, but a thread being pulled towards something. You don't tell your mother you're leaving, though she sees you go. She doesn't stop you, just watches through the doorway, her expression unreadable, the way clouds gather before a storm, not threatening but knowing. You pass the plaza, quiet now, its stones still cool from the night. The ashes from yesterday's incense have been swept away, though a faint scent of copal still hangs in the air, clinging to the memory of smoke and song. No one lingers here before the sun touches the temple steps. Even the priestess, who seemed more spirit than woman yesterday, is nowhere to be seen. The bowl is gone, the cloth veil has been tied back, the stage is empty, waiting. You continue past the plaza, heading not for the river or the gardens, but toward the edge of the forest, where the trees lean in closer and the path narrows. This is not a place forbidden, but it is not a place often walked alone. Children are warned to stay where the sun can still find their shoulders. Too many stories have grown from the shadows here. Stories of things that watch, of voices that don't echo quite right, of old gods who never left but grew quiet, waiting for people to forget how to listen. You don't go far, just to the base of the oldest ceiba tree, the one your grandmother used to say was planted when the first stargazers mapped the heavens in burnt bone and sap. Its roots are thick as your father's canoe, some above ground, some twisting deep into the soil like the veins of the earth itself. You sit there, pressing your back to the bark, and hold the stone in your hand. The face stares back up at you, but it no longer feels unfamiliar. You don't know its name. You're not sure you need to. The wind picks up slightly, enough to stir the leaves, enough to lift the edge of your tunic and cool the sweat already rising on your skin. It carries with it the sound of birds waking, of branches creaking gently in their sleep. And beneath those noises, something else. Faint, rhythmic, not drums, not feet, digging. You sit up straighter, straining to listen. It stops almost as soon as you notice it. Just a few soft thuds, like someone burying or uncovering something slowly, carefully. You rise, hesitant, and glance in the direction of the sound, which came from beyond a small outcropping of stones wrapped in creepers. You walk cautiously, your breath shallow, and as you move around the stones, you see him, a boy, not much older than you, maybe 15, his skin smudged with soil, his tunic damp with sweat. He's crouched low, one hand holding a carved stick, the other brushing dirt away from something flat and pale buried in the ground. He doesn't see you at first, but then his head lifts and his eyes meet yours. There's no surprise in them. It's like he's been expecting it. He doesn't speak. He just tilts his head slightly and moves aside, revealing what he's been uncovering. A circle of stones, arranged with purpose. In the centre, another carving. Not quite like yours, but close. The same style, the same age, the same stillness. You kneel beside him. The morning presses in. Somewhere behind you the village begins to stir. But here, in the soft dirt beneath the trees, something older is waking. And you're not alone in listening to it anymore. You don't speak right away, and neither does he. The two of you crouch beside the stone circle in a silence that doesn't feel awkward, only fragile, as if even a whisper might stir something neither of you is ready to see. The morning sun filters through the trees in slow-moving beams, catching on the edges of the stones and the boy's dark hair. His fingers are still resting near the earth, half curled, dirt clinging beneath the nails. The mark in the centre of the circle is faint but precise, a set of overlapping lines that curl inward like a spiral trapped inside itself. It too isn't the same face as your stone, but it carries the same presence, the same hush around it, like it knows it is being looked at and is waiting for something more than recognition. The boy finally leans back and wipes his hands on his tunic. His eyes don't leave the carving. When he speaks, his voice is low and calm, like someone who is used to being alone with his thoughts. It was buried shallow, he says, like it wanted to be found. You nod, still crouched. The dirt is cool beneath your toes, and you press them gently into it, grounding yourself. I didn't come looking, you say. I was just pulled here. He glances at you, the edge of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth, but not a teasing one, more like agreement. The kind of smile that says, yes, I know what that feels like. They call me Ixmal, he says after a moment. You introduce yourself, and the name seems to settle between you like a stone dropped into a still pool, not loud, but permanent. He studies you for a second longer, then gestures to the mark on the stone. They used to say there were watchers under the ground, he murmurs. Not gods, not spirits, something else, not above us, not below, just beside, like roots that never reach the surface but still feed the whole tree. You blink at that. It's not what the elders in the village teach, not what your father tells by firelight when the rains fall and the beans are cooking. But something about the way Ixmal says it makes it sound older than the stories you've heard. Like a memory passed down in whispers between those who never stood in the centre of the plaza, but always watched from the edges. I think you were called like I was, he says simply, and now it's starting again. That phrase again. It lands the same way it did yesterday when the old woman said it in the plaza. Starting again. You want to ask what it is exactly that is starting, but your mouth is dry and your thoughts too full. Ixmal doesn't seem to need your question. He points at the spiral. There are others, he says, symbols, stories, left in places like this. Each time something big was about to happen, someone found one, and each time a child saw something before the village did. You hesitate, then you reach into your tunic and pull out the stone the priestess gave you. Ixmal's eyes widen slightly, but not in shock, more like confirmation. He takes it gently, turning it in his fingers, then holds it up beside the spiral. Not a match, not quite, but close enough that it sends a quiet thrill up your spine. You've been marked, he says, not by the gods, by something older. The forest presses closer now. The light thickens. A breeze stirs the ferns and carries with it the sound of a bird call you don't recognize, low and broken, like something echoing through a hollow place. Ixmal stands, brushing dirt from his legs. There's another one, he says, nodding into the trees. Not far from here. I found it moons ago, but I didn't understand it until today. You hesitate only a second before rising to follow. The ground beneath your feet feels different now, like each step is pressing into something awake. The air smells faintly of sap and stone and something metallic like blood in water. As you disappear beneath the canopy, one last beam of sunlight falls across the carving, illuminating the spiral like an eye half open. Something is watching, and this time it's not waiting to be found. The forest swells around you as you follow Ixmal into the trees. The canopy thickens, pulling the light into long green shadows that stretch across the narrow path like threads unravelling from something much older than either of you. Vines hang low and thick, like ropes forgotten by giants. The roots beneath your feet twist and rise, forcing each step to be deliberate, cautious. The further you walk, the more you feel the village slipping behind you, its smoke and voices dissolving into the breath of the forest. It's not frightening, not exactly, but there's a hush here that feels different. Not the quiet of peace, the quiet of being watched. Ixmal doesn't speak much as he leads you, but his movements are sure. He walks like he's done this many times before, like the forest is a friend that doesn't need conversation. You find yourself matching his pace, your feet careful, your breathing slow. Time becomes strange here. You don't know how long you've walked. It could be minutes, or the stretch of a whole morning. The sounds around you are soft and damp. Birds calling once and then falling silent. Leaves brushing against your shoulders. The rustle of something small darting through undergrowth. Every now and then you catch a glimpse of something carved into a tree or etched faintly into stone. Marks that have been worn by rain and time, but not forgotten entirely. Ixmal finally stops near a place where the forest opens slightly into a clearing no wider than your mother's garden. But it feels vast, like the space around it is pulled inward. The trees here lean away instead of over, as if they are holding back. At the centre of the clearing is a slab of stone lying flat and half sunken into the ground, its surface moss-covered and glistening in the filtered light. You step closer and the pattern becomes visible. Another spiral, this one more intricate than the last, with smaller symbols spinning outward like echoes. But it's not just a carving, it's a map. You can see it now. Lines not just for beauty but for meaning. Paths, connections, maybe even stars. Ixmal kneels beside it and brushes his hand along one of the smaller spirals near the edge. The moss comes away easily, as if it had been waiting to be lifted. Beneath it is another face, not as bold as the one on your stone, but unmistakably kin to it. The same hollow eyes, the same solemn curve of mouth. But this one has cracks running through it, as if something once tried to break it open. They tried to hide it, Ixmal says quietly. A long time ago, the old ones who still remembered how to listen. The forest kept it safe. You crouch beside him, tracing one of the lines with your finger. It's been carved deep into the stone. The edge is sharp despite the years. The pattern leads your eye inward, always inward, as though drawing you to the centre of something. You glance up at Ixmal. What does it mean? You ask. He looks at you, and his eyes carry something too large for his age. Not fear, a kind of waiting. I think it's where it begins, he says, or where it ends, maybe both. Your hand tightens around the stone in your pocket. The warmth is back, not from your skin, but as if it's responding to the place itself. You don't know how to explain it, but something inside you stirs, like memory being shaken loose. You see the jaguar again, just behind your eyelids. You hear the whisper of your name in the smoke. You feel the shape of the bowl in your chest, as though you've been carrying it all along without knowing. Ixmal stands slowly and looks around the clearing. There are more places like this, not many, but enough. My grandfather found one once, and he said it changed everything. He didn't speak much after that, just carved, just listened. You rise beside him, the stone cool again in your hand. The map beneath your feet seems to pulse gently, like breath moving through stone. You feel it in your ankles, your knees, the back of your neck, the forest, the stone, the sky. It's all speaking in a language without words, and something in you is beginning to understand its rhythm. Ixmal looks at you again, more serious now. Whatever the priestess saw, whatever she called when she spoke your name, I think it was this. You nod, slowly. not because you fully understand, but because something deep within you already agrees. You do not yet know the path, but you have found your first marker, and the ground beneath you is no longer silent. The clearing holds its breath around you. There is a stillness here that feels less like silence and more like anticipation, as though the forest itself is listening, not just to you and Ixmal, but to the stone beneath your feet, to the lines etched into its surface, and to whatever stories those lines were meant to hold. You both stand there for a while, not moving, letting the moment settle. The sunlight slips in angled beams through the canopy, catching on specks of dust and pollen that drift lazily in the air. It is not yet mid-morning, but already the day feels older than it should. Time here folds in on itself. Ixmal kneels again and traces one of the outer spirals, this one marked by smaller symbols like stepping stones. He speaks softly, as if talking to the stone itself. My grandfather told me the land remembers, that before there were temples, before there were kings, there were places like this, places that held the breath of the world, the breath of what came before. His fingers still then lift, but he said only those born beneath a watching moon could hear it again. You glance upward, as though the moon might still be visible, hiding in the blue of the sky. But it's long gone. Only your memory of its strange brightness last night remains, and the image from your dream of a pool that reflected not your face but one older, watching, waiting. You move slowly to the opposite edge of the stone and kneel, brushing away leaves and soil where another mark lies hidden. As your palm passes over the surface, you feel a faint warmth, not from the sun, from below. The stone hums faintly as if recognizing your touch. You press your hand against it and feel a soft pulse, like the echo of a drum beat that hasn't sounded yet. Ixmal notices your stillness and comes to your side. That's it, he says. That's where it always begins. In every story, every map, the centre is the first to open. Open, you ask. He nods. Not like a door, like a mouth. His words stir something inside you, a line from one of the old songs your mother used to hum when you were small. You can't recall the full tune now, only the part that spoke of the earth's voice buried deep, and of those who could hear it weeping or laughing depending on the sky. You run your fingers over the centre of the spiral. There's a small indentation there, barely wide enough to fit the stone in your hand. Slowly, with a glance at Ixmal, you take your carved stone and place it inside the hollow. It fits perfectly, not loosely, not snugly, as though it has always been meant for that space. At first, nothing happens. Just the weight of the forest pressing in again, the wind threading through leaves far above your heads. Then faintly a vibration rises through your knees. The ground doesn't shake, it murmurs, like breath moving through a throat. A line of ants that had been marching across the stone scatters suddenly, vanishing into the moss. You look up at Ixmal and see his eyes wide, not with fear but awe. A sound rises next, not loud, just a low hum, like stone grinding slowly against stone somewhere deep below. Then from the centre of the spiral a tiny puff of air escapes, barely enough to ruffle your hair. But it smells of something old, wet, earthen. The scent of root and rot and something metallic that lingers on your tongue. Ixmal leans closer, his voice barely audible. It's answering. And then, from beneath the stone, a new crack appears. Not a break, but a seam, thin and deliberate, curving outward from the place where your stone rests. It splits the carving gently, opening it like a seed, revealing a second layer beneath. Another face, this one more detailed, and staring upward. You pull your hand back instinctively, your breath caught somewhere between your ribs. The new carving is different. Its eyes are closed. Its mouth curved, not in sorrow, but in calm. Like it's dreaming, Ixmal whispers. She's waking. You don't ask who he means. You already know. You sit back on your heels, the warmth of the stone still lingering in your palm even after you've removed it from the centre. The newly revealed face beneath the spiral lies still, eyes closed, lips slightly parted in a way that makes you think of someone halfway between sleeping and speech. There is a serenity in its features that softens the air around it, like the silence has turned into something living. Ixmal is quiet, but you can feel the tension radiating off him. Not fear, not even surprise, but reverence, like something he's long suspected has finally stepped out of the shadows and laid itself bare in the morning light. Neither of you speaks for a time. You both just stare at the stone, listening to the forest, to the faint pulse in the earth, to the feeling that you are not alone here and never were. The clearing has changed since you first arrived. The light is gentler now, filtered through the branches and slow-moving patches, and the air carries a dampness that wasn't there before. Not like rain, but like the inside of a cave or the moment before water breaks through dry soil. The hum beneath the stone is gone, but its echo seems to have settled into your chest, a rhythm that your own heartbeat is slowly sinking with. "She's always been here," Ixmal says finally, barely louder than a breath. "We just stopped listening." You nod, though you're not sure yet what it is you believe. What you do know is that this doesn't feel like magic, not the kind you feared as a child or heard about in Firelight stories. It feels older than that, dear. Something elemental, a memory that belongs not to people but to places. Ixmal brushes more moss away from the carving's edges. The design spreads outward in a pattern like petals, each curling symbol leading the eye back to the face. You notice now that beneath a layer of moss and soil, the stone is a deep grey-green, not unlike the stone you were given by the priestess. Perhaps they came from the same place. Perhaps they were carved by the same hands. Ixmal leans back on his palms, eyes closed now as if trying to match the stillness of the face in the stone. "My grandfather said there were places where the sky once touched the ground, where people didn't just worship the gods, they spoke with them, not with offerings, not with prayers, but with memory, with dreams." You stare at him, the words lodging themselves in you in a place too deep to fully understand. "What does that mean?" you ask softly. He opens his eyes and looks at you, and for the first time there is something like vulnerability there, as if he's trying to say a thing himself barely believes. "I think we're part of something coming back," he says. "Something forgotten." The words make your skin prickle, though the air remains still. You look, down again at the face carved into the stone. It hasn't changed. And yet now that the dirt is cleared away and you can see it fully, there's something new in its shape. It's not just a woman's face, though it could be. It's not just a god's. It is the land, the water, the hush between the trees, and something about it, something soft in the tilt of the head or the slight arch of the brow, reminds you of the priestess's expression just before she spoke your name. Suddenly you feel the need to move, to stretch your legs, to rise from the ground that is humming a little too close to your bones. You stand slowly and step away from the stone, letting your eyes wander across the clearing. You expect to feel disoriented. Instead, everything is sharper. The smell of the moss, the faint chirp of a bird tucked high in the branches, the soft rustle of leaves touched by a breeze you cannot feel. Ixmal stands too, brushing dust from his knees. "We should come back tomorrow," he says. "It'll change again, they always do." You glance at him. "They?" He shrugs, half smiling. "The dreams, the stones, the ones that remember, they never stay still once they've been seen." And as you begin to make your way back through the trees, the weight of his words follows you like a shadow stitch to your heels. You do not look back at the clearing. You don't have to. You know she is still listening. The walk back to the village feels longer than the walk into the forest, though your feet follow the same narrow paths. There is a heaviness now in the soles of your feet and the backs of your knees, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of having seen something that refuses to leave you. The image of the woman's face carved into the stone returns again and again, etched not just into memory, but into the rhythm of your thoughts. You feel it in the pressure behind your eyes, in the way your heart beats against your ribs. A part of you wants to speak of it out loud, to ask Ixmal what he really saw, what it meant to him. But he is silent as he walks beside you, not withdrawn, just thoughtful, his gaze focused on the shifting patterns of sunlight on the forest floor. Maybe he's still listening. Maybe the forest isn't done speaking to him either. When you reach the edge of the trees and the first sight of the village's outer walls appears between the fronds, the sounds of daily life return slowly. The thump of stone on cornmeal, the high laugh of a child chasing a hen across the dust, the scrape of a reed broom against stone, familiar anchoring sounds. But you don't step fully into the open right away. You pause just beyond the last tree, and Ixmal does too, sensing your hesitation without question. The air smells different here, more cooked, more lived in, less wild, less ancient. And though it should be comforting, something inside you resists stepping back into that rhythm. You reach into your tunic and touch the stone again. It's cooler now, quieter, as if resting. But the memory of how it fit into the spiral, of how the earth breathed beneath it, has left a mark. You know now this isn't simply an object to be carried. It is something that recognizes and responds, something waiting for the right hands to awaken it. When you finally step back into the village, everything continues as it always does, but you feel the eyes, not all at once and not from every face, but in glances that last just a moment too long, in conversations that pause when you pass, in the way a girl your age turns to whisper something to her older sister before casting a sidelong look your way. They remember the ritual, the priestess's voice, your name. No one speaks of it directly, but it ripples through the day like the faint smell of rain on dry ground. You are marked now, and not just by the stone. Your mother is weaving when you return, her fingers moving quickly through the loom, her back straight and sure. She sees you approach and stops without looking up. "You've been with the boy," she says, her voice neither accusing nor surprised. "Yes," you reply, unsure whether to say more. She nods once, sets aside her thread, and finally meets your eyes. Her gaze lingers on your face as if checking for bruises she cannot see. Then, to your quiet relief, she simply pats the seat beside her. "Sit," she says. "Tell me only what you need to." You sit, and the telling comes slowly. Not all of it, just what feels ready. The clearing, the carving, the pulse beneath the earth. Her expression doesn't change, but her hand still, folded quietly in her lap. "I saw that stone once," she says after a long pause. "Not the one you carry, but the other. Long ago. When I was a girl, I wandered farther than I was allowed. I found it just before the rains came. It frightened me." You glance at her. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" She gives a faint smile. "'Cause I didn't think I was meant to. And because some things are not warnings, some are invitations." She rises and places a hand on your shoulder, warm and steady. "But if it's returned, and if it has called you, then it means something is moving again. Something that sleeps beneath our stories." That night, as you lie on your mat and stare at the rafters above, the breeze slips in through the door carrying the scent of distant flowers. You feel it brush against your cheek like a whisper. And just before sleep takes you, you hear it again. That low hum, from the earth, from the stone, from somewhere beneath everything, calling, soft, patient, calling. Sleep finds you in pieces that night, not as a descent into rest, but like drifting between shallow pools, slipping from one still surface to another. The quiet hum you heard before sleep never fades fully. It lingers beneath the sound of your brother's slow breathing and the soft creak of wood shifting in the roof. Even in sleep you remain near the surface of yourself, as if something has tied a thread from your dreaming body to the waking world, and it will not let you sink all the way. The dream is not like the others. There is no pool this time, no face waiting in the water. Instead, there is a field, wide, cracked, empty. No trees, no stars. The sky is the colour of ash. In the distance there is a sound, but not a word, a rhythm, a steady beat like hands striking stone into time. You walk toward it, though your feet do not touch the ground in any way you can feel. The field seems endless until it does not. The horizon rises all at once, not slowly, but like a wall revealed by turning around too quickly. And there she stands. Not the priestess, not the woman from the stone, but someone between them. A presence, not a person. Her form is wrapped in the grey of the sky, her hair indistinguishable from the wind. And where her eyes should be, there are spirals turning slowly inward, just like the carvings you saw in the clearing. She lifts her hand and places her palm over her chest, then stretches it outward, fingers open. The motion is simple, but it fills your chest with something so large it almost hurts. It is not fear. It is not joy. It is the vastness of being seen. When you wake, the sky outside is still dark, not night, but not dawn. That hush between hours when the world is waiting to decide which face to show. You sit up slowly, careful not to wake your brother, and reach for the stone. It is warm again, not hot, but no longer asleep. You press it to your chest, echoing the gesture from your dream, and for a moment, you feel the faintest flutter against your ribs, like wings, like roots. Your mother stirs on the other side of the room. Her breathing shifts, not waking, but aware. She does not open her eyes, but she speaks. "You felt her," she says softly. You do not answer. You do not have to. "There will be more now," she adds. Each time she comes, the path changes. Not all will see it, but you will. The rest of the morning is slow. You help grind maize, feed the hens, carry water from the well that now seems to gurgle more slowly, as if the earth is distracted. The village moves as it always has, but you notice things you didn't before. The way one of the elders stares too long at the smoke from his cooking fire, as if reading it. The way the children's games include new songs, ones that speak of faces behind trees and voices beneath stones. The way the priestess passes through the plaza without speaking, her steps deliberate, her hands always hidden in her sleeves. Ixmal finds you again near the edge of the gardens, a woven pouch slung over his shoulder and dust clinging to his shins. He doesn't greet you with words. He simply nods, and you follow. There is no need for questions. He carries the air of someone who has also seen something in the in-between hours. You both understand that the stone clearing is no longer the end of the path. It is the doorway. And now the door is ajar. You walk together again into the trees, but this time the forest doesn't feel like something to move through. It feels like something opening around you, like an ear listening with every rustle of leaf and creak of branch. The ground seems softer, the light more uncertain. The birds are quieter, but their silence feels chosen. Ixmal speaks finally, as the trees begin to thin again. There's another one, south of the river bend. The stones are different there, older, cracked from within. You glance at him. How many of these places are there? He shrugs slightly. As many as there are questions. The breeze brushes your cheek. The stone in your pocket pulses once, and you realise as the path winds ahead of you that the journey has no shape you can see yet, only steps, and each step hums with memory. The path that leads south of the river is narrower than the others, more wild, less worn. The trees grow closer here, as if they've been guarding what lies ahead. You and Ixmal walk in quiet rhythm, the crunch of twigs and the low sweep of leaves brushing against your arms, your only companions. The forest no longer feels like a boundary. It has changed since you first stepped into it with uncertainty. Now it breathes with you. Each step feels invited, each pause a moment of permission. The sun is higher now, though its light barely touches the ground through the thick branches. Here, sound travels differently. It doesn't bounce back the way it does in the open plaza or near the river stones. It sinks, soft and slow, swallowed by the canopy and the moss and the thick folds of green that sway gently without wind. Ixmal carries a pouch of dried maize and a gourd of water, but neither of you speaks of hunger or thirst. It's as if your bodies know what's important now and wait silently for what the day will show. You cross the river at a shallow bend where smooth stones rise from the water like the backs of sleeping creatures. The current is quiet here, humming around your ankles as you step carefully from one stone to the next. Ixmal pauses at the far bank and places his hand on a low-hanging branch, whispering something too soft for you to catch. A habit maybe, or a kind of thanks. You follow him into the trees again, this time watching closely, because the path ahead is unfamiliar, and yet your chest tugs as though it knows what lies waiting. It isn't long before the clearing opens ahead of you, but this one is different. It's not shaped like the others. It's narrow, more like a wound carved into the forest than a place meant for gathering, and at its centre are the stones. They rise from the earth at strange angles, some half buried, some cracked clean through. There's a silence here that presses heavier than any you've felt before. Not the silence of waiting, the silence after something has already been said. You move closer, heart steady but full, and kneel beside one of the stones. The cracks that run through it are not natural. They split through carvings that once spiralled outward, their patterns now broken, misaligned. You brush dirt from a groove and uncover part of a face, an eye, half-lidded, still serene despite the damage. Ixmal kneels beside another stone, running his fingers over a different pattern. This one is not a spiral. It's a series of lines, sharp and deliberate, intersecting at points that seem to shimmer faintly when touched by the light. These ones are older, he murmurs, maybe too old to remember themselves. You trace the spiral on your own stone, the one the priestess gave you, and hold it beside the cracked face. The similarities are clear even in their broken state. These are not isolated marks. They are echoes. And this place, this wounded clearing, feels like a memory no one speaks of but everyone carries. Something happened here, you say softly. Something that was meant to be forgotten. Ixmal doesn't answer right away. He lifts a shard of stone that has fallen from one of the carvings and holds it to the light. The markings on it are finer, etched with care and something like reverence. He turns it in his hand, eyes narrowing. My grandfather once said that when the old stories became dangerous, the stones were broken so they could no longer be read. But even broken, they still remember. You look around at the fractured circle, imagining what it must have looked like before the cracks, before the silence. The carvings would have spun together like rivers feeding into a lake, their meanings layered, spiralling, breathing. Now they lie in pieces, like ribs scattered in dry soil, but still humming faintly beneath the dirt. Ixmal pulls a small blade from his pouch and begins carefully digging near the base of one stone. You help, fingers curling around roots and clumps of moss, until the earth gives way to something smoother, another carving. This one is smaller, almost hidden, tucked into the root structure as if placed there by a hand that didn't want it found too easily. It is a spiral again, but this one is whole. As your fingers trace its edge, the hum in your stone returns, soft and steady, and something within you stirs with recognition. You aren't just uncovering a place, you're remembering one. As your fingers brush away the last thin layer of soil, the full spiral emerges from the ground like something waking after a long and patient sleep. The lines are unbroken, more delicate than those on the larger stones, and arranged in a way that feels less ceremonial and more intentional, personal. This carving wasn't meant for display or worship. It feels like a message meant for someone specific, left where it could be found only by hands that knew how to listen. Ixmal watches quietly, crouched beside you, his eyes following your movements, but his thoughts clearly spiraling in their own path. He doesn't speak, and neither do you, for a long moment. The clearing remains still, heavy with breathless air, as if the forest itself is leaning in closer to see what you'll do next. The spiral has a small depression at its centre, similar to the one in the first clearing. You know before you even try it that your stone will fit. When you slide it into place, it clicks softly, not like rock on rock, but like something aligning. The hum returns instantly, not from the ground this time, from the air. And then, without warning, a voice. It does not come from above or below. It does not come from either of you. It slips into the space like wind through hollow cane, low and measured, speaking words that don't quite make sense, and yet pull at something deep inside you. You don't recognize the language. It isn't the tongue spoken in your village, nor the one sung by the priestesses during festivals. It's older, rounder. Each syllable curves like a breath through a reed pipe, each phrase falling with the weight of something meant to last longer than memory. Ixmal tenses, not in fear, but in concentration. His head tilts slightly, as if trying to catch the shape of the voice more than its sound. You feel it too, not in your ears, but in your chest, beneath your ribs. The words pass through you, brushing gently against something inside you that had been sealed long ago. They are not instructions, they are not a warning, they are a remembering. And just as quickly as it began, the voice fades. The air settles, the hum quiets. You sit back, your heart thudding gently in your chest, and look over at Ixmal. His brow is furrowed, lips parted as if he had been about to speak and forgot how. "What was that?" you whisper. He shakes his head slowly. Not a voice, a recall, like an echo finding its way back to where it started. You glance down at the stone still resting in the spiral's centre. It glows faintly now, not with light, but with something steadier, like heat, or breath, or quiet certainty. You lift it carefully and the feeling lingers in your palm. Beneath it, the carved lines shimmer for a second longer before returning to their mossy stillness. Ixmal kneels beside the stone and begins to trace some of the symbols around the spiral's edges. They are small, nearly worn away, but he moves with the care of someone who's seen them before. After a few moments, he exhales. "They match the ones from the cloth my grandfather carried. I thought they were nonsense, just worn-out ink." He pauses, but he said they came from a tongue the land spoke before we had names for it. You let the word settle. The forest is still watching, you can feel it. Not with menace, with the patience of something vast. "What does it mean?" you ask, though you're not sure you expect an answer. Ixmal looks up, his face open, his eyes filled with that familiar depth of something just beyond understanding. "I think it means she remembers us. Even after all this time, you rise slowly, your knees aching slightly from kneeling so long, and look around the broken stones once more. The cracks are still there, the wounds, the silence between carvings. But now you see that silence differently. It's not the absence of sound, it's the breath held before a story begins. You take one last look at the spiral, then tuck your stone safely against your chest. The words are gone, but their shape remains, and somewhere inside you, the old tongue is still curling around your ribs like roots. You and Ixmal leave the clearing slowly, with steps that no longer feel like walking away from something, but carrying it with you. The stones, broken and whispering, fade behind the ferns and low-hanging vines, yet they remain with you, not just as images, but as weight. The kind of weight that doesn't burden, but grounds, like the centre of a drum, like the bottom of a pool, like the part of a song that stays long after the echo fades. The language, whatever it was, still vibrates behind your sternum, not as sound anymore, but as rhythm. You cannot remember the words, not even the syllables, and yet the shape of the phrases remains imprinted somewhere soft inside your thoughts. Ixmal is quiet as you walk. He moves differently now, a little slower, his arms occasionally brushing aside branches without looking at them. His mind is somewhere else, so you can tell, perhaps replaying the same voice in his memory, trying to recall what it meant, what it wanted. Perhaps, like you, simply listening. When you reach the bend in the river again, the water seems louder than before, not in volume, but in presence, as if it too had been stirred by something beneath the soil. The birds have returned to their usual calling, though every now and then one falls silent mid-song, as though it has remembered something it should not say aloud. You cross the water with more care, each stone now familiar underfoot, yet oddly more sacred. The far bank smells of damp bark and ripe berries. The world feels denser, as if you've been gone longer than the hours suggest. And in a way you have. By the time you reach the outer fields of the village, the sun is slipping toward late afternoon, stretching the shadows long across the paths and walls. Smoke curls from a few cooking fires, and the scent of roasted maize and fermented cacao clings to the air. Everything looks as it did when you left, but as soon as you step onto the trodden path you feel the shift. The eyes again. Children stop playing as you pass. A woman you've known since you could walk looks up from her clay pot and stiffens, though she nods politely. An old man watering his squash pauses, hand resting on the edge of the gourd, and watches you until you vanish behind a corner. Ixmal notices too. He says nothing, but he walks a little closer now, not in protection, but in quiet solidarity. You both know what this means. The spiral has begun spinning wider, and its pattern is no longer contained in the forest. At the plaza's edge you slow. The priestess is there. She is seated beside the altar, not performing, not chanting, just watching. A small bowl rests in her lap, filled with dark water, its surface untouched by wind. Her gaze meets yours across the stones, and she does not smile. But her eyes soften, and she tilts her head slightly, as if to say, "Yes, I know what you've heard." Ixmal stops a few steps behind you, giving you space. You approach her slowly. The bowl remains still. When you're close enough to see your reflection in it, she speaks, her voice low and smooth like smoke curling beneath cloth. "You placed it in the second mouth," she says. You blink, unsure whether it's a question or a statement. You nod anyway. She reaches into the folds of her robe and pulls out a piece of bark paper folded once. She hands it to you without explanation. You take it carefully, unfolding it. The symbols drawn there are familiar. The same patterns around the spiral, but this time a new mark rests in the centre, a single eye, closed. "She sleeps still," the priestess murmurs, "but she stirs more quickly now. You've heard her tongue. You've answered." You look down at the paper again. The eye seems to pulse faintly on the page, though you know that must be your imagination. "What happens next?" you ask quietly. The priestess leans forward slightly, her breath warm against your cheek. "She will ask you something." And with that she closes her own eyes and dips her fingers into the bowl, breaking the stillness with a slow ripple that fades into silence. Ixmal places a hand gently on your shoulder. You turn to him, paper still in your grasp. Neither of you says it aloud, but you both feel it. The asking has already begun. The parchment remains in your hand long after the priestess has retreated into her chambers behind the altar, her form slipping through the curtain of woven reeds as if she had never been there at all. You stare at the closed eye drawn in thick ink, its edges curling slightly from the warmth of your fingers. It's not just a drawing, not anymore. The moment your gaze met it, something inside you shifted, as if the eye wasn't meant to be seen with the eyes, but with the chest, the ribs, the space between thoughts where names fall away and only knowing remains. Ixmal glances at the page once but says nothing. His silence is no longer passive. It is active, full of attention, like a drum held still before it strikes. You walk home through alleys that seem narrower than before. The village is small, yes, but today it feels smaller still, like a bowl with the walls that curve too closely, keeping you in, keeping something out. When you pass familiar faces, they nod but don't speak. There's a hush around you now, not hostile but careful, like everyone is waiting for something to finish becoming whatever it's trying to be. At home, your mother is cooking near the hearth, her back to the doorway. The scent of boiled maize and crushed chills hangs in the air, comforting and ancient. You pause in the doorway longer than you should. When she finally turns, her eyes soften and she opens her arms without asking anything. You fold into her, the paper still clenched in your hand, your head resting briefly against her shoulder. She says nothing about the spiral or the priestess or the path you've been walking. She simply holds you for a moment and then returns to her stirring. You eat in silence. Not because there's nothing to say, but because the words haven't arrived yet. They are still forming somewhere deep, curling around the edges of what you now know and what you still do not. When night falls, it falls fast. The sky turns the colour of thick ink, and the wind carries that dry, restless scent that often comes before a storm. But the stars remain clear, and the moon, though not full, is bright enough to paint thin, silver lines on the packed earth outside your doorway. That night, you do not sleep easily. You lie on your mat, eyes wide, listening to the crickets, to the distant calls of nightbirds, to the steady breathing of your brother nearby. But beneath it all, another rhythm begins again. The low, almost imperceptible hum you felt in the spiral. It doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. Like your blood has taken on a new voice, and it is trying gently to be heard. You sit up slowly, the paper still tucked beneath your mat, and retrieve it with quiet fingers. The inked eye seems to glow faintly in the moonlight, though perhaps it's only the sheen of the paper. You stare at it for a long time, waiting for something. You're not sure what, and then, just as your eyes begin to close, the dream returns. You're in the field again, that flat, cracked space beneath the grey sky. But this time you're not walking, you're standing still. At your feet lies a spiral freshly carved into the earth. Around you no wind, no sound, only a sense that something is about to shift. You look up and she is there again, the figure. Not the priestess, not your mother, not even the carved woman from the stone. This time she is taller, clearer, cloaked in mist that moves against the windless air. She raises her hand again, but does not speak. Instead, she places one finger to the centre of her brow, right where the eye would be. And suddenly you feel it, a pressure in the same spot on your own forehead. Not pain, not heat, just presence, as though an idea is being placed there. Not through words, but through contact. When you wake, the room is still. The coals in the hearth glow softly, and your brother stirs in his sleep. You reach up and touch the spot between your brows, half expecting to find something there. But there is only skin. You lie back down, staring into the dark rafters overhead, and breathe slowly, evenly. She didn't speak, but she asked. And now the answer begins to form, not in your voice, but in your steps. For, long time after the spiral deepened, you and Ixmal simply remain kneeling there, the dust swirling gently in the shaft of light, your palms still hovering near the stones as though touching air that had suddenly remembered it was once a voice. The hush inside the ruined chamber is thick now, no longer the silence of abandonment, but the silence of holding. Something has shifted. You feel it in the weight of your breath, in the slight tremor beneath your knees, in the way the very air seems to lean inward. The old stories, the buried ones, the ones passed through bone and fire, have found something in you worth speaking to again. Ixmal exhales softly and begins arranging the smaller stones in a circle around the spiral. He doesn't speak as he does it, and you don't interrupt. You only watch, because the way he moves tells you he's not guessing. This isn't a ritual taught to him in a hut or a field. This is memory guiding the body. Some part of him remembers this arrangement even if his thoughts haven't caught up to it yet. When the stones are all in place, he sits back on his heels, his hands resting lightly on his thighs. You mirror him, unsure of what is about to unfold, but certain you must be still to receive it. The light on the wall catches the spiral just so, and for a moment it seems to spin, not physically, not in any way that would stir dust or stone, but inwardly, as if your vision is drawing you into its centre. You close your eyes instinctively, and that's when the room begins to hum, not loud, not shaking, just a low vibration that lives in the walls and the floor and your ribs. It's not sound, it's presence, as if the stone itself is remembering how to breathe again. Your fingers tighten slightly on your knees, grounding you, but your mind is already sliding somewhere else, drawn gently like silk pulled through water. You see a field again, but not the one from your dreams. This one is lush. The sky is high and blue, scattered with birds in slow flight. In the centre of the field stands a structure, wide and low, made of layered stone and thick beams. Round it, people move quietly, carrying bowls, arranging leaves, placing bundles of cloth at the base of the outer walls. They do not speak. They do not need to. Every motion is full of knowing, as though they are reenacting something they have done many times before. You move closer, unseen but not unwelcome. You step through an archway and into a room lit by long strands of woven fibre dipped in oil. At the far end stands a woman. Her face is turned away, but you know her, or rather your bones do. She turns slowly, and you see the closed eye painted on her brow, not in ink, not in dye, burned in ash. She smiles, not at you, but in recognition of what you carry. Her lips move, and though no sound reaches your ears, the meaning slides into your mind like water finding a hollow. She is not asking a question this time. She is naming something. A title, perhaps. A role. Something passed down not through bloodlines, but through spirals and silence. You open your eyes with a sharp breath. The chamber is still. Ixmal is watching you, his expression unreadable but steady. The stones remain arranged, the spiral unchanged, except for that deepened curve you now understand wasn't for show. It was for unlocking. Ixmal speaks softly. Did you see her? You nod. You don't try to describe it, not yet. The words aren't ready. Instead, you look down at the centre of the spiral again, and this time, without instruction, you press your palm against it and say, not with voice, but with will, that you are ready. For the naming, for the asking, for whatever memory the stone still holds in its lungs. Your hand rests flat against the centre of the spiral, the coolness of the stone anchoring you even as something beneath it begins to stir. Not movement, not vibration, but a shift in weight, as if the chamber has exhaled after holding its breath for years. A breath that carried names once, and perhaps yours was among them. You hold your palm there longer than feels natural, but you cannot pull away. The stone is no longer just surface, it is passage. Beneath your skin you feel the answer coming, not rushed or thunderous, but with the unhurried rhythm of roots returning to soil. Ixmal does not move. He remains beside you, watching not with expectation, but with the quiet patience of someone who knows that whatever happens next must arrive on its own terms. His presence steadies you. He does not guide or explain or question. He simply holds the space open. Then the warmth comes, subtle at first. Not heat, but the sensation of closeness, of presence, as if someone were standing just behind you, breathing softly over your shoulder. The scent is faint but unmistakable. Smoked herbs, rain-washed stone, and the bitter bark your mother sometimes chews to ward off fever. It is not from this moment. It is from memory, or perhaps from someone else's. The spiral begins to glow, not with light but with depth. The lines darken, deepen, shimmer faintly, like wet clay just pulled from a riverbed. And then it speaks, not aloud, not in the air, inside you. A single word drawn like a thread across your ribs, trailing behind your breath. Tezim. It lands without explanation. A name, a title, a whisper stitched into your marrow. It does not ask to be understood. It only asks to be carried. You repeat it once in your mind, and it settles there like a seed dropped into water, ready to root. You remove your hand slowly, as if breaking a quiet agreement, and sit back on your heels. Ixmal watches your face, his eyes searching for a sign, a trace of what passed between you and the stone. You look at him and speak the name aloud, barely above a whisper. Tezim. His eyes narrow slightly, not in confusion, but in familiarity. The word touches something in him too. You can see it, a flicker behind the eyes, a wrinkle of thought that has not yet taken form. I've heard that before, he says softly. Once. In a dream my grandfather recited before his voice failed. He said it was the name of the one who listens while others speak. You taste the name again, silent this time. It fits in your mouth like something meant to live there, a shape that echoes in the back of your throat. You look around the chamber now with new eyes. The walls, though broken, feel fuller. The hollow corners now hum with the residue of that single word, as if they had been waiting all this time just to say it again, just to hear it spoken aloud. Ixmal begins gathering the smaller stones again, gently wrapping them one by one in the frayed cloth. He doesn't speak, but you sense that he feels the shift too, that the moment of naming was not just for you. As you rise, your legs stiff from kneeling, the spiral on the wall fades slightly in the growing light, but it remains deeper than before, as though something in the chamber has acknowledged you now, not chosen, not exalted, just known. Outside, the air is brighter, and the birds have returned to their usual songs. The world spins on, unchanged in its motion, but altered in meaning. Each tree, each breeze, now holds context, as if the whole forest and all the paths you've walked were only ever leading to this moment. As you step into the sunlight, the name continues to echo, not as a question, but as a tether. You are Tezim now, and somewhere deep in the layers of time that curve like roots around stone and silence, something has remembered you. You walk with Ixmal along the narrow path that leads out from the ruins, the trees pressing close as if reluctant to let you leave. The name still turns quietly inside your chest, not asking anything, not pulling you forward or back, just there, like breath. Tezim. It settles deeper with each step, attaching itself not just to your thoughts but to your way of seeing. The birds that sing in the trees no longer sound like background noise. Their songs seem arranged, part of some wide pattern that now includes you. The crunch of your footfall on the earth no longer feels accidental. Even the wind through the undergrowth feels like it's brushing past you in recognition. Ixmal is thoughtful but not distant. He glances your way now and then, as if watching to see how you carry what just happened. But he doesn't speak. He trusts the silence. You've grown to trust it too. There is a rhythm to it now, a language without interruption. The village appears sooner than expected, its outer fences and drying gourds seeming somehow more brittle after the depth of the ruins. You walk into it not as someone returning from a journey, but as someone stepping into the beginning of one. And even though no one says a word as you pass, you feel the gaze of the old ones, the curious glances of children, the sideways looks of those who sense the shift but haven't yet found words to name it. Your mother is waiting, as if she knew you'd return by this hour. She sits by the entrance of your home, basket in her lap, hands busy with husks. When she sees your face, she doesn't rise, doesn't rush. She nods once, just enough to let you know she sees what's changed. You sit beside her without speaking, your fingers joining hers in peeling the husks. The rhythm is steady, calming. The sound of it fills the space where words would otherwise crowd. After a while, she breaks the quiet. It's in your breath now. You nod, unsure how she could possibly know, but knowing she does. I have a name. She doesn't look up. I know. It's not for us to say it aloud unless asked. You glance at her then, wondering how much she truly remembers, how much she has hidden behind the folds of quiet motherhood. Her fingers keep moving, precise and unhurried. When you were born, she says, almost absently, the midwife said your cry came late. Everyone thought it meant something was wrong, but your grandmother smiled and said, "This one is a listener. She'll speak when she knows the shape of the silence." You pause, a husk half torn in your lap. The way she says it doesn't surprise you, but the timing does. It's as though she had held this story all your life, waiting for the shape of the moment to fit. Later, you sit alone near the edge of the garden where the soil is soft and warm underfoot. You hold the stone in your palm and stare at it, not waiting for it to glow, or hum, or speak. Just holding it. It's changed too, not in shape, not in weight, but in presence. It no longer feels like something given to you. It feels like something you have always had but only just remembered. The wind rises briefly, lifting a swirl of dust around your ankles, and you hear something. Not a word, not a song, just a breath, drawn in through invisible lips and released with the quiet of a tree bending under its own age. You close your eyes, and in that space where breath and memory meet, the name speaks again, not to remind you, but to join you. You are Tezim, and the listening has only just begun. The days that follow pass in ways both familiar and not. You still rise before dawn, still help your mother prepare food, still carry water and sweep the hearth and tie bundles of herbs to dry along the rafters, but something invisible now drapes itself over all of it. You feel it in the way your hand hesitates before picking up a bowl, in the way you linger by the fire longer than needed, watching how the flames speak in low tongues along the wood. The village continues as it always has. People walk and talk and barter and tend their animals, but their voices drop slightly when you pass. Not with fear, not yet, but with the caution one uses when a storm is sensed far off and the sinister sky hasn't quite admitted it yet. Ixmal doesn't come by as often now, though when he does, his presence feels unchanged. He carries messages with his eyes, with the way he leans against a doorway or rests one hand on a wall while he speaks. The kind of messages that don't need words. He seems to know that your silence is no longer the absence of speech, but its own kind of sound. There's comfort in that, in not having to explain the weight that has settled into your shoulders, into your gaze, not heavy, but real. It does not press you down, it draws you inward. One morning, before the sun has stretched its fingers across the sky, you wake with a whisper in your chest. It's not from a dream this time. It doesn't come with visions or strange lands. It is simple, a feeling, the need to return to the stone, not to ask more questions, not even to seek answers, but to be near it, like a tree leaning back into the soil that fed it. So you walk, alone. You leave before your mother stirs, leaving a small bundle of corn by the mat so she knows you are well. The path through the forest has changed again, not in its layout, but in its feel. The trees seem to know you now. They no longer rustle with suspicion. They hush when you walk past, allowing your thoughts to settle. The light between their branches dapples more softly. The roots don't try to catch your feet. When you reach the ruin where the spiral chamber waits, you pause before entering, not from hesitation but reverence. You step in quietly as if not to wake something still dreaming. Inside, the stones are just as you left them. The spiral remains etched in the wall, deeper now in the morning light. You kneel, not to press your hand again, but just to be near it. The air in the chamber feels warm, touched by breath not your own. And for the first time you feel it clearly. The difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is a moment. Listening is a staying. Listening asks nothing. It offers presence, so you stay. You breathe. You listen. And slowly the chamber answers, not with words, not with symbols, with memory. You remember your grandmother's voice calling from the garden, not for help, but simply to let you know she was there. You remember the sound of the rain against your roof the night your brother was born, how it seemed to sink with his first breath. You remember your father's laughter, not often heard but always deep and full when it did come. These things are not prophecy. They are not mystery. They are life, and the spiral is made of them too. The stones do not just speak of futures. They remember what is worth carrying forward. The voice that once echoed through dreams does not rise now. It doesn't need to. It has moved inside you. It lives in the spaces between your breaths, in the gaps between your heartbeats. And as you rise to leave, you understand that the listening was never about the stones alone. It was about the people, the ones who still wake before dawn, the ones who laugh too loudly in the plaza, the ones who whisper stories they think are only for children. You are Tezim. You are the one who listens, and soon you will need to speak. You do not expect the summons, though you feel it before it arrives. The way the sky feels heavier at midday, the way your name hovers just behind each sound you hear. It comes not with a messenger, not even a word. It comes in the form of a white flower placed on your doorstep at dusk. A flower that blooms only when the rains threaten. Its petals close tightly in the day and opening like a whisper after the heat has gone. You know what it means. The priestess wants you. Not for ceremony, not for ritual, but because the stone has spoken your name, and now the world will want to know why. The village is still when you make your way to the temple. A few fires flicker behind doorways, the soft clatter of bowls being cleaned, but no one speaks. It's not silence, it's listening. You're no longer just Ixmal, the girl who used to chase frogs behind the water catchment or braid her brother's hair too tightly. You are now the one who stepped into the ruins and returned with a name that does not belong to any lineage. The path to the altar is swept clean, its steps bare and wide beneath the twilight. The priestess stands at the top, waiting, her back to you, arms folded beneath the long fall of her robe. You climb slowly, the stone cool beneath your feet, the weight of the name moving differently tonight. Not as a burden, but as a key. When you reach the final step, she turns. Her face is calm but not indifferent. Her eyes hold the kind of quiet that is earned by seeing many seasons pass and knowing when to speak and when not to. She gestures for you to follow and walks into the chamber behind the altar. It's smaller than you imagined, more earthen than sacred, but it carries the scent of oil and ash and something older, something that smells like stone that has been listening too long. You sit when she sits. There are no candles, no chants, only her voice when it finally comes. You heard her. You carry her breath now. You nod. She's not a spirit, not in the way our ancestors use that word. She is a remembering, a knot that was tied long before we were born, pulled tighter by each generation that chose silence. You wait, letting her words wrap around you. She will not tell you what to do. She never has. She only listens until someone listens back long enough to find the shape of what must be said. You breathe slowly, trying to feel the shape she's speaking of, though it's not quite clear yet. She is asking, the priestess says, because this village has forgotten how to remember. The rituals continue, the fires still burn, but the meaning has gone thin, like broth made from bones too many times. The spiral isn't only about prophecy, it's about presence. We were never meant to look forward without knowing where we are standing. You close your eyes and see the faces of your neighbours, your brother, Ixmal, your mother's tired hands. You see the girl you were, the one who sat on the temple steps years ago and watched ants carry away crumbs, wondering if they too had names passed down. The priestess's voice softens now. You are Tezim. That name does not mean oracle. It means the one who holds the space between silence and speech. You're not meant to shout. You're meant to remember aloud. You feel your throat tighten, not with fear, but with knowing. I don't know how, you whisper. You do, she replies. The stone is not only beneath the forest, it is beneath your tongue. She rises and leaves you there, letting the words settle. The room grows darker, but not cold. The quiet holds you gently. You understand now that being Tezim is not about visions or answers. It is about shaping your voice to hold what others cannot say yet. It is about speaking only when the silence is ready. And you know, as you sit in the stillness of the stone chamber, that the first word you speak will not be yours. It will be for them. When you leave the temple chamber, the sky is deeper than night and yet not quite dark. A silver hush blankets the village, the moon high and pale, casting thin shadows over rooftops and tree limbs. You move through the quiet not as a visitor, not as a child returning home, but as something else entirely. The footsteps you place on the ground seem to echo more gently now, as if the earth beneath you is listening, careful not to startle the new voice you've begun to carry. You pass Ixmal's home but do not stop. You pass the tamarind tree where you first met him that morning with the bundle of stones. Your fingers briefly brush its bark as you walk by, like a greeting between old friends who no longer need words to share understanding. The name Tezim does not beat in your chest like a drum. It sits more like the gentle pulse in your wrists, steady, always there, ready to be offered when needed. It's not a calling, it's a waiting. The villagers still watch you, but their stares have softened, no longer cautious, no longer braced against the unfamiliar. Something in your eyes has told them what words haven't. You are not returning from some distant path, you are returning to them. The next morning your mother does not ask where you were. She sets a bowl before you at dawn, thick with cacao and ground seeds, and squeezes your shoulder before stepping outside to sweep. Her silence is not avoidance, it is trust. She too carries quiet truths that have no need to be named out loud. Later that day, a woman from the far edge of the village comes to your doorway. Her name is Che, and she's older than most, with skin that folds like woven cloth and eyes that still shine through their wear. She does not ask anything. She just sits on the stone near your fire and hums a song you remember from your early days. A lullaby for planting season. She doesn't speak until the song ends. My husband still dreams of rain, she says, even though the rains came weeks ago. He wakes with water in his eyes and says he hears drums in the sky, but no thunder ever follows. I don't need prophecy, child. I just need to know if it's time I stop waiting for something I've already survived. You sit beside her. The words she gives you are not a puzzle. They are a weight. A small one, but not yours to ignore. You do not answer right away. You let the silence open between you and her, and then you say softly, "If he still hears drums, then there's something yet to listen to. Not in the sky, in his breath. Keep him close to where the wind moves." She does not cry, she does not question, she nods, presses your hand and leaves. Her steps are slower on the way out, not heavier. She has unknotted something, just a little, and left it with you. That night, 2 others come, a boy barely older than you carrying a small carved figure with a cracked leg. He does not speak, only places it in your palm and shrugs. You understand the question he hasn't asked. You touch the figure's worn wood and tell him, "It hasn't stopped walking, just started walking in circles. Give it a new foot." His face breaks into a soft grin and he leaves without a word. Then a man comes, a farmer with swool and stittle on his knees and worry in his shoulders. He doesn't sit. He just asks, "How do I know if the maze is listening to me?" You look at his hands, rough, honest. When you speak with your feet in the dirt and your eyes closed, do you feel like you've already answered your own question? He looks at you for a long time, then he nods. It goes on like this. Not crowds, not noise, just one by one. People come. They do not come for magic. They come for remembering. And you, Tezim, are learning what it means to hold their words and hand them back gently shaped. Not truth, not law, but memory, made whole by breath. And still, you know the spiral is not finished speaking. The days melt into one another like warm wax beneath the sun, and yet each moment feels precise, held, like beads strung onto a thread of purpose. The village settles into this new rhythm without ever naming it, as if they all knew that once the spiral chose a listener, the days would slow just enough for the unheard things to catch up. You speak little still, only when asked, only when the silence seems to lean in, waiting to be filled with something shaped gently and handed back. You find you do not long for noise, you do not hunger to be understood. The listening has become its own kind of nourishment. But even this stillness, this delicate balance between past and present, is not the end of the spiral, never promised peace, only memory. One evening, after the air has cooled and the sky has begun that quiet bleeding from blue to amber, you stand alone near the edge of the field, fingers brushing the tops of young maize stalks. You are not waiting. You are simply being. and yet something in the wind turns, a shift so subtle it might have been mist had you not already become tuned to the breath of things. It moves through the grass with no sound, past your legs, lifting the edge of your tunic like a shy tug from a child. Your name is not spoken, but it is felt, as if the trees beyond the field have remembered you. You begin to walk, no hesitation, no question. Your feet find the path as if it had never left your body. The sky thickens behind you, filling with stars too early for the season. Even the birds quiet their wings as you pass. You do not carry the stone. You do not carry anything at all, and yet you feel full, as though the forest is not taking you into it, but letting you return to something that once belonged to you. The trail winds deeper this time, past places you thought you knew, and into folds of the woods you've never entered. The trees grow closer together here, their trunks pressed like shoulders in an old crowd. The air is cool, but not cold, the kind of cool that hints at breath waiting just behind the bark. The light fades until there's only the silver shimmer of moonlight cutting through branches, and then even that fades. Still, you walk. Eventually, you come to a hollow. It is not marked, no symbols, no spirals, only a stillness so profound it hums. You step inside. It is not a room, not a cave, not a clearing. It is a place that lives between things. The earth here is soft and damp beneath your feet. Moss clings to every stone and a scent rises from the soil that reminds you of firewood right before it burns. You kneel, not from command, but because your legs simply understand that standing would be a kind of interruption. And there, in the centre of the hollow, not carved or placed or summoned, is a stone. It is round, smooth. Unlike the others, it does not glow, it does not hum, it listens. And suddenly you feel her, not as a voice, not as a vision, as a memory too old for your own bones, but still housed inside them. She has no face, not in this place, okay? She is not the woman of your dream, not the priestess, not even the whisper you heard in the chamber. She is the space left behind after all those shapes have vanished. And she leans toward you now, not with words, but with feeling. She's asking again, but not for answers, for presence, for the kind of presence that does not seek meaning, only truth. You place your palm on the round stone, and for the first time no image fills your mind. No vision, no sound, only your own breath. And in that breath you understand you're not here to learn, you're here to remember. Not what they knew, but what they forgot they carried. You close your eyes, you let the stone remember through you. The forest exhales, and the spiral opens again. When your eyes open again, the forest looks unchanged, but you are not the same. The stone beneath your hand is quiet now, not silent, but complete. It has said what it needed to say through the breath it borrowed from your body, and now it waits again. It does not command, it does not demand, it only holds. You rise slowly, every movement careful, as though the air itself is fragile in this place. Around you the trees remain still, not frozen, but in a kind of listening of their own, as if they too have received something and are turning it over in their ancient wooden minds. You walk back without rush. There is no urgency in your steps, only steadiness. Each footfall is a reply, each pause a small prayer that does not need a god. By the time the sky begins to shift again from black to blue, the edges of morning unfolding like thin paper across the horizon, the village roofs appear in the distance. Smoke rises from a few hearths, and roosters begin their long calls that seem to stretch farther than they did before. You wonder, briefly, how long you were gone, but the question does not settle in you. It is not important. At the entrance to your home, your mother is waiting, sitting with a bowl of fresh tortillas wrapped in a cloth. Her face does not hold surprise. She looks at you the way the moon looks at the tide, knowing it has returned only because it had to. You sit beside her, take one of the warm tortillas, and chew in silence. The weight of the forest is still in your limbs, but it is a welcome heaviness, like carrying a blanket that smells of memory. She does not ask what you saw, what you felt, what you touched. Instead, she reaches for your hand and holds it. And for a moment, the morning is full, By mid-afternoon, word has spread that you have returned. You feel it in the way footsteps pause near your doorway, in the small hesitations before people pass. The children glance longer, the elders look shorter, but you do not hide. You sit outside weaving dried leaves into cords for hanging peppers. The work keeps your hands busy while your mind moves slowly, forming the edges of what must come next. It is not a vision, not a command from the gods. It is simply a truth that now lives in your chest like a steady drum. You are not just Tezim, the one who listens. You are also the one who must speak, but not to tell others what to do or what the future holds. Your voice is not for answers, it is for awakening. That evening, as the sun lowers behind the hills and paints the sky with firelight, you stand in the centre of the plaza for the first time in your life. The same plaza where children play, where elders lean against clay walls to watch the day fade. You do not raise your hands. You do not call for quiet. It comes naturally. One by one they slow their steps. One by one they gather. Your voice is not loud when you begin. It doesn't need to be. You speak slowly, each word shaped by the stone that once lived in your hand, by the breath that once lived in the chamber wall, by the silence that grew roots beneath your tongue. You tell them about the hollow, not its exact place, but what it held. You tell them about the spiral, and how it was never meant only for the oracles or the priests. It was meant for them, each of them, as a way to carry memory when language failed. You tell them that listening is not a gift, but a practice. That forgetting is not failure, only a pause in the song that has not yet ended. You do not tell them what the gods want. You tell them what they already know, that the soil remembers, that their hands remember, that the drumbeat in the sky is their own hearts echoing back at them. And they listen. Not because you're special, but because something inside them has been waiting for the sound of their own truth returned to them. And when you finish, no one claps, no one cheers, they just stay, still, breathing in the space you opened. And in that stillness, the spiral lives again. Later, as the stars claim the sky and the fires burn low, you sit by yourself and you do something you haven't done in days. You sing, softly, a song your grandmother once hummed while grinding maize, a song without words, a song meant only to keep the breath steady. The wind carries it gently, and the night listens back. The days that follow are not filled with ceremony. There are no grand declarations, no altars raised, no parades through the streets. What comes instead is quieter and far more enduring. A woman begins to hum while she kneads dough in the early morning, and her neighbour hums along with her, not in perfect unison but in rhythm. A boy begins to carve a new toy with symbols that his grandfather once told him meant safe journey. He does not ask what they mean now, he simply places them there because his hands remember. A man who has long walked the path to his fields in silence begins to speak to the wind as he goes, not expecting a reply but offering one anyway. It is not change that has arrived in the village. It is recognition. And through it all, you remain among them. Not above them, not apart. You return to the tasks that always belong to you. You fetch water, you peel fruit, you repair the soft frays of old garments. But with every touch, every glance, every moment of stillness, something larger breathes alongside you. The spiral has opened not just within you, but around you. And the people have remembered how to bend their ears to what lives beneath their noise. Each night you sit by the fire outside your home and listen. At first it was only a few who came. Chi with her quiet strength and her stories that never start at the beginning. Ixmal, who says little but always looks like he's halfway through understanding something important. Then the others began to come too. They don't always speak. Some come only to sit and share the silence. Some come with questions wrapped in riddles. Others come with no words at all, just the weight of something that wants to be held in company. You don't answer all of them. Sometimes your voice offers only the space for their own breath to catch up with them. Sometimes you answer with a story. A half memory of a time you barely remember yourself, but that feels like it belongs here. And always when you speak, the sound is slow, unhurried, as though the stone itself still lingers in your mouth, reminding you that every word is a seed that may someday grow. Then one night, the priestess returns. She does not wear her ceremonial robe. She does not bring incense or bells. She comes with her hair down, her hands empty, her feet dusted with the same soil you walk on every day. She sits beside your fire and does not speak at first. You offer her a drink, and she accepts it without a nod. The two of you stare into the flames for a while. The sound of crickets rising like a low chorus around you. Finally, she turns to you. The spiral has turned back on itself, she says. You know what she means. You've felt it for days now. The sensation that something is drawing inward again. Not closing, but gathering. Like breath before speech. There is one more place it wants to take you, she continues. Not in the forest, not in dreams. You nod slowly. You felt the call rising in you like water behind a dam. It's not urgent, it's not forceful, but it's steady, and it's time. At dawn, you set out alone. You take nothing with you but the stone, which has grown warm again, as if stirred by your agreement. The path is familiar, but your feet are different now. They walk with intention, not destination. Past the plaza, past the tamarind tree, past the garden where your mother once grew medicine leaves in crooked rows. Each step feels like it completes a sentence the earth has been waiting to hear. You arrive at the old ceremonial platform. Not the temple, not the altar. The one long forgotten behind the orchard, where the ground rises in a low mound and the trees form a ring around it. It is overgrown and yet not lost. You clear a small space in the centre, brushing aside the fallen leaves and soft earth, until the shape of old stone meets your fingertips. The spiral is faint here, worn, almost erased, but still it breathes. You kneel and place the stone at its centre. Nothing moves, no light, no hum, just the wind rising in the branches overhead. And then you speak, not to the stone, not to the gods, but to the remembering. Your voice is soft but steady. You speak the names of those who have gone without songs, the names of paths that were never written. You speak the shape of the silence that taught you how to listen. You speak the breath that came before yours. And finally you speak your name, not Ixmal, not even Tezim. You speak the name the stone gave you in the chamber beneath the ruin. The name that has no translation, only presence. As the word leaves your lips, the wind stills, the leaves hush, and the spiral deepens, only slightly, just enough to let you know it is heard. You sit there long after the sun has risen, the light curling around the trees like golden thread, and feel the weight of all that has passed. Not heavy, not sharp, just rolled real. When you finally rise, you leave. The stone there. It is no longer yours to carry. It is theirs now, and it will wait, as it always has, for the next breath. By the time the spiral had given its final breath, something in the air had settled, not like dust, not like fog, but like a soft remembering that chose to remain. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even noticeable unless you knew how to sense what moved in the pause between footsteps and in the hush that followed a name not said aloud. Ixmal didn't speak of the final place, and no one asked her to. The village did not need to be told what it already carried, deep in the folds of its skin, under fingernails stained from the harvest, behind eyes that had watched too many rains come and go. They knew the breath had passed through her, and they knew it had stayed. Her return was not a moment carved into time. She came back walking the same path she had walked before, slow and barefoot, hair undone by the trees that had brushed against her as she passed beneath their arms. Her feet had carried her home without instruction. She arrived with nothing in her hands, and yet she brought something heavier than any object could hold. She did not carry the stone any more. She didn't need to. The stone had returned to its place and she to hers. That morning was like any other. Birds called overhead as they always had, but there was a softness in their rhythm. Children played, and their laughter wasn't different in sound, but in feeling, less desperate to be heard, more comfortable just being. The elders leaned against walls and watched the sunrise creep over the rooftops without urgency. And in all of it, the people moved like a story being told not with ink or tongue, but with breath. Ixmal's mother didn't greet her with tears. There were no gasps, no questions. She simply looked up from where she had been grinding maize, wiped her hands on her skirt, and offered her daughter a seat beside her. The two of them sat, bodies nearly touching, saying nothing at all because nothing needed to be said. They both knew where she had gone, even if the place had no name. They both knew what had been left behind and what had been brought back. And in that silent space between them, time slowed, then folded, then vanished altogether. In the days that followed, life returned to its rhythms, and yet everything felt new. The people didn't speak of change because it didn't feel like a change. It felt like a return. The old ceremonial platform where the spiral lay carved and quiet became a place of gentle gatherings, not of crowds, not of chants, not of fire and spectacle. Just one or two at a time, arriving with no intention but to sit. They came not to pray but to breathe. Some came with bundles of dried leaves or broken bits of bone from the forest floor, offerings not to a god but to a memory. They left these beside the spiral, not expecting anything in return. Others brought nothing at all, only themselves. And when the spiral warmed in the sun and grew cool beneath the moon, it held those visits not as burdens, but as stories retold in stillness. Ixmal watched them from afar. She never claimed the place as her own, never stepped forward to be the guardian or speaker or interpreter. She understood now that the spiral didn't need a keeper. It needed a witness, a breath, a pause long enough for someone to hear themselves again. And if anything, that was what she had become. Not the voice, not the answer, but the breath that held the question until it softened enough to be understood. She continued to live among them not as the girl returned, not as the oracle awakened, but as a woman who walked slowly and listened carefully. People still came to her, but no longer for visions. They came to share. They came to sit. They came to tell her the dreams they had pushed away for years because they hadn't made sense, or because they'd made too much. She never told them what they meant. Instead, as she asked them what part of the dream still lingered when they opened their eyes. What colour, what sound, what taste had stayed on their tongue when the waking began. And through that, they often found their own answers. Not because she gave them, but because she had taught them how to ask better questions. One afternoon, as the clouds gathered over the hills and the scent of rain pushed through the trees, Ixmal came to her carrying a small bundle wrapped in woven cloth. He sat across from her by the fire and unwrapped it carefully, revealing a new stone, not ancient, not carved, just a stone he had found by the river. "It looks like nothing," he said with a shrug, placing it between them. "But when I hold it, I forget what I was worrying about." She smiled and picked it up, feeling the cool smoothness against her skin. "Then it remembers for you," she said gently. "That's what stones do when we forget how to let go." They sat for a long while without speaking, watching the flames flicker and listening to the first drops of rain tap the edges of the roof. When he finally rose to leave, he left the stone behind. She didn't ask why, and he didn't explain. It was not a gift. It was not a sign. It was simply ready to stay. That night, with the fire long faded and the stars thick above, she lay awake, not restless, but aware. The village slept. The wind moved softly through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called once, then fell quiet again. She thought of the spiral still resting in its mossy pit, and of all the breath it had held over the years. Some shouted, some whispered, some cried, some sung. She thought of the first voice that had called her in that dream, the voice that had not belonged to a woman or a god, but to something older. And she realized now it had always been her own voice, not from the present, but from the remembering. A future voice echoing backward, asking her to follow it home. She closed her eyes and felt the earth beneath, her like a cradle, not holding her down, holding her up. No great light flashed. No sudden knowledge surged into her mind. Only calm. The spiral would wait again now. Wait for the next girl or boy or old man with tired eyes and a quiet step. It would wait without urgency, because breath does not need time. It only needs space. And she had given it that. finally she slept, and the world quietly breathed with her.